China is reportedly weeks away from verifying a 28-nanometer argon fluoride immersion lithography machine, a tool the world assumed would take another decade to build domestically. That would make SMEE one of only a handful of companies on Earth capable of patterning chips at that resolution. The accepted rule was simple. Without access to Western lithography tools, China couldn't reach 28 nanometers. That rule is cracking. But here is the thing no one is saying out loud. The tool body is only part of the machine. The light source inside it, the Excimer laser that makes patterning physically possible, still comes from abroad. And that single fact changes everything about what SMEE's progress actually means. Before you assume this is another China built a chip headline that evaporates under scrutiny, the SMEE machine is real, the verification process is real, and the domestic tool adoption targets are official policy. China's government has set a target of moving from roughly 35% domestic tool adoption towards 70% by 2027. The progress on the tool body is not in dispute. What is in dispute is whether a tool body is enough to call this independence. If China cannot domesticate the Excimer laser, then every domestic lithography machine is hostage to a single foreign module. One export restriction, one supplier decision, and the floor China has spent a decade raising drops out from under it. By the time you finish watching this, you will understand exactly what an Excimer laser does inside a lithography machine, why it is harder to replicate than the scanner body surrounding it, and what that gap means for China's semiconductor independence in real, practical terms. This is not really a story about SMEE's scanner. It is about the one node on the semiconductor supply map where China's name simply does not appear, and what happens when you build a house around a lock you do not own the key to. So why does 28 nanometers even matter? The leading edge of chip manufacturing today is 3 nanometers and below, made by TSMC and Samsung. By comparison, 28 nanometers sounds ancient. But that framing misses what 28 nanometers actually builds. The chip inside your car's anti-lock braking system is a 28 nanometer chip. The controller managing an industrial motor is a 28 nanometer chip. The radio frequency components in 5G base stations, the processors in military electronics, the sensors in factory automation, these are all 28 nanometer chips. The bleeding edge is where your phone's processor comes from. The workhorse node is where the physical world runs. When the 2021 chip shortage hit, it was not a shortage of leading-edge chips that ground automotive production to a halt across 3 continents. It was a shortage of exactly this class of chip: mature, mid-node, indispensable. That is the strategic ground SMEE is trying to secure. A lithography machine is essentially a projector, but instead of casting a film onto a screen, it casts an ultra-precise pattern of light onto a silicon wafer coated in light-sensitive material. Where the light lands, the circuit pattern is transferred. The tighter and more precise that beam of light, the smaller the features you can draw, and the more transistors you can pack onto a single chip. The light source is not just a component of the machine, it is the machine's heartbeat. Without it, you have an expensive empty frame. And the specific light source required for patterning at 28 nanometers and below is an argon fluoride Excimer laser. Every argon fluoride immersion lithography machine, every one in the world, runs on a laser that produces light at 193 nanometers of wavelength. That is deep ultraviolet, far shorter than anything the human eye can register. The laser pulses thousands of times per second, and that pulse-to-pulse energy stability has to be maintained to within fractions of a percent. Too much variation in pulse energy, and the pattern etched into the wafer becomes inconsistent. Inconsistent patterns mean defective chips. Defective chips mean the entire production run is compromised. The precision is not impressive in an abstract engineering sense. It is the literal precondition for the machine doing anything useful at all. The two companies that dominate this node are Cymer, now owned by ASML, headquartered in San Diego, and Coherent, formerly known as II-VY, after a series of mergers. Between them, they supply essentially the entire global installed base of argon fluoride lasers for lithography. There is no Chinese name at this node. Not a startup, not a state lab with a confirmed shipping product. The node is foreign-controlled, and the record shows no confirmed domestic alternative at production volume or production specification. Think of the Excimer laser like the combustion chamber in a jet engine. You can build the fuselage, the wings, the landing gear. All of that is extraordinary engineering, and doing it domestically is a genuine achievement. But if the combustion chamber that generates thrust is sourced from one supplier, and that supplier stops shipping, the plane does not fly. SMEE's scanner is the fuselage. The Excimer laser is the combustion chamber. And right now, China is building the fuselage while the combustion chamber still arrives by foreign invoice. You might be wondering whether China could simply buy the lasers separately, even under existing trade pressures. The answer is no, and the reason is layered. Argon fluoride Excimer lasers are export-controlled under United States and multilateral frameworks. Cymer, as an ASML subsidiary with its headquarters in San Diego, sits directly under United States export jurisdiction. Coherent similarly. These are not gray area items. They are controlled equipment with auditable supply chains, and attempting to acquire them through intermediaries is exactly the kind of transaction that export enforcement agencies track. But the wall goes deeper than the laser module itself. The gas mixture that fuels an argon fluoride laser, ultra-high purity argon fluoride, requires handling and production precision that is itself concentrated in a small number of suppliers. The precision optical coatings on the cavity mirrors, which must survive millions of high-energy ultraviolet pulses without degrading, represent another concentrated node. The laser module is not a commodity component sitting on a shelf. Its inputs are themselves controlled and concentrated. It is less like buying a spare part and more like trying to independently source enriched fuel. Every step of the supply chain leads back to the same small cluster of foreign hands. What about countries outside the United States orbit? Russia, perhaps? No known alternative supplier at production scale exists outside the Cymer Coherent axis. No confirmed alternative path appears in the public record for this specification of laser. That is not a claim that no alternative will ever exist. It is a precise statement of what the record currently shows. So why hasn't a decade of sustained Chinese investment closed this gap? That question gets to the heart of what makes the Excimer laser genuinely hard rather than just currently difficult. Cymer was founded in 1986. Argon fluoride lasers for chip production were commercialized in the 1990s. That means the leading supplier has been refining these systems for close to 4 decades of production line operation. What that represents in practice is not a design advantage that can be read from a patent filing. It is accumulated process knowledge embedded in materials, in failure analysis, in the institutional memory of engineers who have been running these systems through billions of production cycles. Consider what is physically happening inside the laser. The discharge electrodes in the laser cavity must maintain extremely precise geometry under thermal cycling across billions of pulses. The fluorine gas used as the lasing medium is aggressively corrosive. It attacks nearly everything it contacts. So every internal component is the product of decades of choosing, testing, and refining materials that survive that environment long enough to be economically viable. The optical coatings on the cavity mirrors must survive millions of high-fluence ultraviolet pulses without degrading the beam quality below specification. Those coating recipes are not derived from first principles alone. They are empirical, built up through years of measuring what fails, why it fails, and what survives. It is the difference between knowing the recipe for a wine and knowing how to grow the grapes in that specific valley's soil after 30 harvests. The recipe is readable. The soil knowledge is not transferable on paper. China has thrown enormous resources at hard industrial problems before and caught up faster than anyone expected. Solar panels, lithium-ion batteries, electric vehicles. But those were manufacturing scale problems. The path to competitiveness was building enough capacity, iterating on a known design, and driving down costs through production volume. An Excimer laser's core limitation is not manufacturing scale. It is materials maturity and process depth. You can fund a lab to run experiments. You cannot fund 30 years of production line failure data into existence overnight. The learning curve is not a function of capital. It is a function of time and accumulated operational experience. Now, what does the record actually show about China's domestic efforts on this specific problem? No publicly confirmed Chinese Excimer laser program with verified argon fluoride production specifications has appeared in open sources. That requires careful framing. Chinese state funding for laser technology broadly is documented and real. Domestic laser companies have made genuine progress at other wavelengths. Fiber lasers and carbon dioxide lasers are areas where Chinese manufacturers have become internationally competitive. But deep ultraviolet Excimer lasers for lithography are a categorically more demanding problem than anything in the fiber or carbon dioxide domain. The physics are different, the materials challenges are different, and the precision requirements are in a different class entirely. The honest statement is this: a domestic Chinese program at the research level almost certainly exists. Withholding that inference would itself be false certainty. The incentive structure and the documented breadth of Chinese photonics investment both point toward active research. But no shipping product, no independently verified benchmark, and no confirmed integration into a lithography tool has appeared in the public record. You might reasonably ask, what if they have something and simply have not announced it? That is a fair question, and worth answering plainly. Absence of a public announcement is not proof of absence. But in semiconductor supply chains, where a domestically produced argon fluoride laser would represent a strategic breakthrough of the first order, the incentive to demonstrate that capability is extremely high. Governments and companies in this space do not typically hide capabilities that would move markets and shift geopolitical calculations in their favor. The fact that nothing has been shown, no benchmark, no tool integration, no production claim even from Chinese state media, is meaningful signal. Not proof. Meaningful signal. That distinction matters, and it is the honest place to stand. Step back from the laser for a moment, and you can see the pattern it represents. The Excimer laser is not the only deep, foreign-dominated node beneath a layer where China is making real progress. Photoresists, pellicles, metrology tools, electronic design automation software. The list of foreign-controlled choke points is long. But the Excimer laser is the most fundamental of these for the lithography step itself. A photoresist is a material you process. An electronic design automation package is software you license. The Excimer laser is the physical mechanism that makes patterning possible at all. Remove it, and the process does not get harder. It stops. That makes it the clearest possible illustration of what a choke point actually means. Not something that increases difficulty, but something whose absence makes the operation impossible. China is raising the floor of its domestic lithography capability, the tool body, the stages, the chamber architecture. But the foreign laser is the ceiling above that floor. Raising the floor does not lower the ceiling. And right now, the ceiling has not moved. Here is my honest read. The triumphalist position that SMEE's 28 nanometer progress means China is on the verge of semiconductor self-sufficiency ignores the laser. The dismissive position that China has made no real progress and the gap is permanent ignores the real and sustained advance on the tool body, on domestic materials, and on the policy infrastructure behind it. Neither is right, and neither is particularly interesting. What the evidence actually shows is a country that has raised its floor faster than most analysts expected and is now running into a ceiling that is harder to move than the floor was to raise. The Excimer laser is not a political problem. It is not a funding problem. It is a physics and process maturity problem with 30+ years of accumulated engineering depth baked in. That does not mean the ceiling stays forever. It means the timeline is longer and harder than the tool body progress alone suggests, and that the next 5 years of watching China's lithography story will be written in lasers, not scanners. China has raised the floor of its lithography capability to a level that was genuinely unthinkable a decade ago. But a floor with a foreign-owned ceiling above it is not a room you control. The Excimer laser is that ceiling. Until it moves, the floor is impressive and insufficient. Here is what I want your honest read on. Drop it in the comments. Does the depth of the Excimer laser problem mean China's lithography independence is a decade away at minimum, regardless of how good the scanner gets? Or is the tool body progress itself so significant that it changes the strategic calculus even with the laser gap unresolved? Two genuinely defensible positions. Which matters more to you, and why? If you want to follow exactly how this laser gap plays out, whether a domestic program surfaces, whether export controls tighten further, whether the ceiling starts to move, subscribe, because that is the specific story this channel tracks. The laser at the heart of every lithography machine keeps pulsing. For now, the map of who makes it has no Chinese address. That is the one line the scanner headlines keep leaving out.